Greetings and salutations, my fellow potato pancakes. It is I, Eric J. Chucky, joined, as always, by the boy.
Hey!
This is the Two Nerds podcast, and today we begin to go over the changes to a lot of Unearthed Arcana subclasses for Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition that were brought about in Tasha's Cauldron of Everything.
Yeah, this has been... They went through and they did final official versions of a bunch of different classes which had been in various Unearthed Arcanas and reprinted. I kind of, just to get holistically out front, I kind of wish they had gone through and done some balance changes to some of the PHB subclasses for things.
This is something I find very interesting that they didn't do, because I don't think that any of us would be able to argue that most of the PHB classes and subclasses, or even to a lesser extent all of them, I mean not quite, but like most of them are not as powerful as stuff that has come since.
No, there's definitely been power creep in 5e. That's just not disputable.
But I don't think the place that the power level of subclasses are at now is unreasonable. In fact, as you suggested, I think the old stuff should rise up to meet it.
Yeah, I don't feel like the new stuff needs nerfs. I feel like the old stuff needs buffs. Barring, like, a couple features that were really top tier and are still top tier, like Bear Totem Barbarian. A bunch of the stuff in the PHB needs buffs, and they didn't do it here, and I'm very confused as to why. But they did clean up, reimagine in some cases. Some of these are fairly substantial changes, and sort of balance a bunch of Unearthed Arcana stuff that we've covered before. So we wanted to, since they're releasing patch notes, we're going to release patch notes.
Speaking of patch notes, I would like to do a podcast eventually that is just sort of a quick review of some of the classes, like the core classes, not the subclasses. Because I feel like things have changed in the time since.
But, yeah, now that we've had some time to really get in the hood and play some of those classes that we hadn't had the opportunity to play.
Or run for them, because that often adds extra perspective. If my voice sounds weird, I'm fine. I just hurt my throat. I don't want y'all out there in the comments going, oh no, are you okay, buddy?
Ain't nobody got the Rona. It's fine.
Yeah, we're all right. But there's a bunch of other changes in Tasha's, or suggestions or optional rules that I think are cool. Get right out in front of it. I'm a fan of the options they offer for modifying races. I like the structure of, dwarves get +2 con and +2 strength.
It helps you. It helps aim. It helps sort of get your sight lines in to aim at a character to make.
There are so many options in Dungeons and Dragons that it's like,
if I want to race with a +2 to int, then having a structure that says, here are the races with a +2 to int is nice because it gives me tools. It's like, all right, well, I want to play a +2 int character because I want to play a wizard. What could I play? Oh, this gives me sort of a starting place. I like that. But I do also like the option to go, no, I really had an idea for this character to be a halfling fighter, but I hate halflings' ability bonuses for the fighter I want to play. You know what? This is just strong man. Strong halfling.
I had a tiefling that I just rolled up a couple weeks ago. And I changed out my secondary attribute bonus to dexterity because it was going into like wisdom or something. And I'm playing sort of a warlock, maybe dipping into rogue. So that secondary dexterity buff was very helpful to me. And that's all I did. They still got the +2 to charisma. All the other features I kept the same. But it's nice to have that option. Like, like you said with the halfling, if you specifically sit down and go, I want to play a gnome paladin,
I want to be able to do a good version of that without having to sacrifice, my stat line or sacrifice my character concept to play a race that has a better stat line, blah, blah, blah. If I have a specific character in mind I want to play, this is a very nice way to enable me to do so. If I have a specific class I want to play, I'm probably still going to use the base options, and they're still there, so I still can. It's not like they went and deleted them. so I can still use that to help inform what I decide to play that class as racially.
Yeah.
I like the options. More options is rarely a bad thing.
The only thing that can happen is it gets overwhelming, and this new option is literally something to go, okay, look, shut up, play whatever you want.
Yeah, I like that. They released some light tools for building like a race from scratch.
Which they've had those since the DMG.
They're fine.
Yeah.
I saw some scuttlebutt that people were upset about them online. They're fine. They're not super robust, but like at the end of the day, if you're making a race from scratch, you're gonna have to do a fair amount of homebrewing anyway on fluff. The mechanics part is easy. Just homebrew it. That's not a cop-out. That's the solution.
I mean, it's... And perhaps I say this from a point of someone who does game design, so I get this more organically. But, like, you look at the options other races have, you look at what they're loaded up with and what is typically taken away in favor of X, and you put that together.
And it's not like, a little bit of balance wonkiness is the end of the universe. So if you wanted to just find a chassis you like mechanically, change the fluff entirely, and maybe change out, they don't like this feature, let's give them this from this other race instead. If you're the DM, it's your world. You're the creator. You got freedom on the canvas, my brother. Go for it. If you're the player, run it past your DM. Be open to changes they suggest, and then go with it. This is not... Speaking as someone who only kind of dabbles in game design and didn't for a long time when he was already a DM, this is not hard. Put on your big boy pants and just do it.
Or don't, I mean, there's so many options offered by...
Yeah, there's so many races. There's like 100 or some shit. There's so many. I often don't keep the fluff of races as a DM or as a player. I will use their mechanics and their features to make fluff that I like. I just do that. You don't have to keep the fluff. It's not required.
And I think that's a lot of stuff that's like, first of all, a very old school thing. I've been, just last night, as of this recording, started diving into Matt Colville's exploration of previous editions of Dungeons & Dragons. He attempts to make a fighter in every edition of the game. Attempts, because as you know, some of the older editions had you roll 3d6 in order.
And so maybe you weren't playing a fighter this time.
Yeah.
Sorry, buddy.
But
it's still garbage, by the way.
He does talk a lot about how the game design early on, and a lot of these core principles we carry through with us to today, was just Gary Gygax trying to populate a world. And I don't want to dive too much into this. Go listen to his shit if you care that much. He is cool.
Well, it was never meant to be prescriptive.
Well, it was supposed to be like, okay, why do paladins have limits to a minimum charisma you need to play a paladin? Back in those editions. Because there are only supposed to be so many paladins, and Gygax envisions them as all charismatic, since they were based on, the paladins. I mean, there's also the fact that dwarves can only get to a certain level, like 6, I believe, because there's not supposed to be that many dwarves. So he made it so people wouldn't want to play dwarves, so that the world you auto-populate with all of these adventurers there's not many dwarves.
Yeah, like, we're not doing that anymore.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the stuff we have gotten rid of, and it's just sort of like, play whatever the hell you want, man. Be a dwarf wizard. Who cares?
Be a dwarf wizard. Dwarf wizards are great.
Dwarf wizards are great. I don't know why dwarves aren't wizards, but...
They're not... you know what? That's not a thing I've ever used.
Yeah, traditionally, I meant. But anyway, we're here to talk about subclasses. We're not going to touch on Tasha's in greater depth, though, so I did want to get that out of the way.
Yeah, it's good to get that right up front. This is these episodes, there might be a couple, mostly going to be about the subclasses, but like, I wanted to cover it briefly, holistically, since we're not doing a separate episode on it, because there's not enough there to do a whole episode on by itself.
I mean, like, maybe for other people, the way they analyze stuff.
But not
like,
for us.
Read it.
Read it. It's not...
I'm not
long.
here to make judgment calls on it. We're here to talk about class coolness and balance changes and what that changes.
We're here to do the patch notes.
Yeah, the patch notes. So, we're going to start at the alphabetical top because, I don't know, tradition.
I mean, start at the beginning, I guess.
Yeah, we could go the other way. We did that for the Animal Crossing reads.
Let's just go back.
Yeah, let's just go back. We're starting with Artificer, which is completely reprinted in this, including the already existing subclasses. But they do add Armorer. They switch out what used to be Shield on their Armorer spells for Thunder Wave. They have basically changed the thrust of the power armor to be more wizardy. So they call it Arcane Armor. And a lot of the other nomenclature gets changed over in that sense.
Yeah.
Which is fine. Power armor does, especially for, gamers who are more broad in the field of fantasy and sci-fi, evoke a different imagery.
Arcane armor could be many things. Power armor is brother the heavy flamer.
Let's see. The defensive field for Guardian armor is now limited to a proficiency number of times per long rest. And guys, I recommend, as we're going through this, have your copy of the PDF sub to read through. Certainly not any sort of tool for 5e.
No. Your purchased from Wizards of the Coast copy of Tasha's Cauldron of Everything. That way you can refer to things.
And the original Unearthed Arcana PDF.
Yeah, cross-referencing is needed. That's definitely what we're doing.
Yes. Just
anyway.
like 6 windows up on this thing. I do like the new proficiency, and we might as well just blanket this right now. Use of proficiency as a sort of limiter.
I noticed that they're really turning into the skid on this. And like we had covered the last class, the last thing we did where there had been some updates to new subclasses where they went through proficiency bonus as opposed to ability score bonus. I, in general, like it. There are a couple times when I do not, that are in this, that feel bad. Not just because they're nerfs. Sometimes they're not even necessarily a humongous nerf. Although in one case they are, and having DM'd for that class, I like it the other way. But it's just a couple times when it doesn't feel good. When we get to them, I'll point them out.
Basically, what you're getting is, depending on how you generate your attributes. Depending on how you generate your attributes, it might be a buff. But because your attributes are mostly going to remain static through play, and if you're one of those people who gets lucky with dice...
and you roll dice to generate attributes.
Yeah, and you do roll dice to generate attributes. Your core attribute is going to be...
higher than your proficiency bonus at all times. So it's enough.
Until level... whenever it jumps up to 6.
Which is... you're never going to play there.
Very unlikely, very unlikely. But it does get higher. That is nice for higher level play.
There's a final little level of boost. I
cool.
don't hate that, but I'm focused mostly on the low and mid levels because that's where almost all D&D campaigns take place. So that's where I have to focus as a DM, which is mostly how I look at things these days.
Sure, and I would agree with that, but I would also... I think this kind of change balances things a lot. I don't know that it's necessarily good or bad, but it does limit usually uses of an ability.
It's a unifying force.
Yes, it is very...
It does make it easier to power budget because it's not, we're budgeting for up to 5 uses of this at level 3.
Or a 5 flat damage bonus or whatever.
We don't have to budget for that. We budget for an exact number that we already have on a pre-existing table that they're not going to change unless they're really homebrewing, at which point, fuck it, you're on your own.
I would never advocate changing the way proficiency bonuses.
Bounded accuracy is baked into every part of 5e. Don't fucking touch those bonuses. It breaks everything.
Yeah.
I'm not being hyperbolic. I've looked at it. It breaks everything.
So, that being said, when stuff changes from a stat to proficiency, we'll mention it, but we'll move along because that's our opinion.
Yeah, I'm going to mention it specifically. We will get to the ones where I do not like it being proficiency.
Sure, yeah.
I would prefer it be stat. They're almost... in one case, it is because it is a direct nerf, and I do not like it. In almost every case, it's because it doesn't feel thematically coherent for that to be proficiency bonus, not based on a stat.
I have that issue as well. It kind of sucks some of the point out of your stats. But there's a lot of advocation in the community, not like a majority, I don't think, but there are a strong group of advocates for your stats are kind of pointless. And this only
helps that.
Yeah.
They shouldn't be. This is D&D.
So, anyway, defensive field for the Guardian armor, you can only do it your proficiency times now, which it wasn't intelligence before. That is just a new limiter, which I think is good.
Yeah, in general, I like that. When it's like, do it whenever to proficiency bonus, that frees up power budget to put elsewhere.
Second skin infiltrator armor no longer gives you advantage on stealth checks. It just cancels out the disadvantage from heavier armor.
I was reading that. I think it still gives you advantage so long as you're wearing lighter armor.
If I was reading correctly, the other features, you have to put your magic armor on plate.
Oh, all right, fair enough.
So what this can do is if you get advantage on your stealth check for another source, that's not wasting advantage.
So it neutralizes you so that when you get advantage...
Exactly. And I think that's a better way to do it, because otherwise you're just kind of stuck with the one thing, or it's confusing and you have to look up rules and go, okay, does double advantage give me advantage? Or
specifically writing it down in the rules is nice.
Yeah. So I like that. Armor modifications can now be applied to a helmet instead of bracers, and instead of any weapon, it clarifies you can specifically infuse the armor's special weapon.
I like the second thing a lot, because the point is magic armor, not magic armor. Also, I found a magic axe that I made magic. I like that a lot. The first thing is a complete nothing burger. It doesn't matter.
It's a weird change. I get it, and there's more focus on the helmet in a lot of their descriptive text. They say stuff like you can...
Well, yeah, because you're Iron Man.
Sure. You can make the faceplate come up kind of thing, or remove the helmet or whatever. And, like, I get... Maybe that was in there because, like, how do I eat? Am I stuck in my armor kind of thing? I can kind of understand that. Otherwise, it is just kind of reading like, okay, you're Iron Man. I get it.
It's a complete nothing burger. Bracers instead of helmet. Okay, I don't care. Did you think I was going to walk around in my cool magic armor that I made from scratch and is super magic and super cool, and also a different magic helmet that I found? Do you think I'm going to do that as a player?
Well...
Because you're wrong.
I mean, and the same logic could apply to bracers instead of...
I'm already wearing plate bracers. I can't wear other bracers under that unless I find, like, some nice leather ones, I guess.
I guess. I think maybe that was the balance reason. Maybe it was just some grognard going, well, you have to wear a helmet or they'll shoot you in the head. I hope not. I hope they fired that guy.
I hope for better for Wizards of the Coast.
Yeah, Jesus Christ. Perfected armor, like, went from int modifier to proficiency bonus. Infiltrator version removes some of the restrictions about who has advantage on the attack. That lets you take advantage and gives the target disadvantage to attack you.
I like the disadvantage to attack you. That's cool. I don't really like the infiltrator set very much at all.
I don't either. If you're going to go that far into having heavy armor, why are you bothering to sneak? Like,
part of the reason you wear plate armor is to clang and bang all throughout the dungeon, man. Come on.
Well, and not even that. It's like if you are playing to the obvious reference here, you're Iron Man. You swoosh in your, red and gold armor, blow people up with your arm cannon, and swoosh out. You're not going into sneak mode. Now,
he does have a sneak mode suit.
And that is what this is, I think. That is for you to go, I'm going to enter stealth mode. We're doing stealth armor today. Let's do it.
Yeah, and that's fair. I just probably, like, were I playing this, is this something you can change on the fly?
Yes.
Oh, that's better. So, were I playing this, and I were the armor artificer, all right, we need to sneak, and we need you to change your armor up to sneak version today. It would literally be, but it's late.
Yeah, Guardian's just better.
It's just better. I would whine. In character, I would whine.
It fulfills the concept a lot better, too, I feel. Overall, I think this is a good change. I get why they went to Thunderwave instead of Shield, but I liked Shield. It felt very magic armory. What a weird removal. But this is overall just a buff. I mean, there's no denying it. We move on to Barbarian. They have made some changes to the Beast Barbarian, the one that gets, like, animal parts.
I'm going to get this right out front. I love all these changes except one, and it's the thing I was mentioning earlier. there's a bit. Yeah, it clears up how the bite attack works, which is nice. I really like that. The only thing that is changed is there's a healing effect somewhere on the bite attack. I forget where. They changed it from con bonus to your proficiency bonus. I hate that. I hate it. It is thematically garbage. I hate it. That feels like it should be con bonus.
Wizards has this weird mentality when it comes to healing.
If you aren't one of the designated healing classes.
And natural weapons.
Yeah, both have to suck at all times.
That is so bizarre to me because, first of all, natural weapons are not... Weapons cost a pittance of gold. It costs me... You give me free weapons when I roll up a character. This is not something that's like a... It's not second edition. This isn't like, oh shit, I need to sacrifice this amount of my power budget, of my money, to get a good weapon. No. You don't. So, like, and we're talking about the difference between, this is mostly what I'm speaking of. Usually, your unarmed attacks for a race, usually a little better for a class.
1 damage.
They do 1d4 if you have special weapons. If you have, like, natural claws.
That's garbage. Why do they do the garbage damage?
At least a d6. These are tiger men or lion men or whatever. Why am I getting you with my tiny little scritchy claws?
A giant 6'6" buff tiger dude or lion dude should... Swiping you with his massive claws should not do the same damage as a dagger. Like, I know they're similar shapes, wizards, but think about thematics.
Sure. I mean, it feels like a nothing place in the power budget.
And you know what the funny thing is? It's not even that much more powerful. It is at maximum 2 more damage in attack.
I would honestly...
Statistically, it's a difference of 1 damage per attack. 1 to feel much better.
I would honestly advocate the way they got rid of the D4 hit die, get rid of the D4 attack die.
It's useful for some things. It's useful for magic missile.
Sure.
It's useful for certain other spells. It's useful for small things like tiny daggers or throwing daggers or like
I could see
little
it for
tiny
like
shit.
Throwing stars and stuff, but like you said, it's a difference of 1 fucking damage.
It's about feel more than actual
I mean,
mechanics.
I can see it for like spells. Like magic missile stuff, I'm not going to argue with that at all. Even some of the lower level cantrips, I get that. You don't want your wizard to be outperforming your fighter with their cantrips. The basic attack is what your fighter has and does. So that's fine. For spells, I get it.
Like, you know, a little tiny throwing dagger shouldn't do the same damage as a short sword. I get it. But giant tiger man should.
I think we should maybe, and this is an option as well, revisit more of the higher damage output weapons. The 2d6 instead of a d12 options, you know, raising your damage floor as an idea. You know, we could get weapons for that matter. Remember the scythe that did like 2d4 or 3d4 in 3rd edition?
Yeah, multiple d4s would also be fine.
Yeah, I feel like this is an unnecessary...
More variance in damage dice in general would be okay. But yeah, with healing for non-healing classes and natural weapons must always suck. So it is writ on a giant wall in Wizards of the Coast headquarters, I have to assume.
And that's the other bizarre thing is I've played a bunch of healers in 5th edition. Healing is almost never necessary.
It feels very necessary if your DM is doing their job. But unless it is boss fighting time, it probably isn't. Unless, again, it's boss fighting time or you guys are going through a long battle-heavy dungeon.
Sure, yeah.
But, like...
I will say in-battle healing is not as necessary as it seems.
This,
I can get the change to only regain hit points if you're below half health.
That's
for
fine.
The beast form weapon.
I understand the mechanics of that. I don't like it because it's a barbarian. Being an unstoppable tank is what they're supposed to do.
Sure.
You guys really nailed it with one sub-feature of one subclass of this fucking whole class. Every type of barbarian should get bear totem. Full stop. It's just... there's a reason I personally think bear totem is... The totem barbarian is the best barbarian, and bear totem barbarian feels the best because that's what that class is supposed to feel like. It is the only one that effectively, for me, really delivers on the idea.
I feel like it is possibly the mechanically superior option. When I was talking earlier about how Player's Handbook, some options are still standout. You mentioned that. That's the one.
But like if you take off the half health thing and you make it con, aka you make it the thing it was before, it's a great way to get that same feel. Only instead of an unstoppable, unbreakable monster, you're Wolverine now.
I mean, even if you leave it at con, but take off, or excuse me, even if you leave it at con and take off that you heal above half health.
Like,
tried to say that right 4 times.
Like, you keep the below half health,
yeah,
but you change it to con. That's also fine.
That's also good.
Because then you're, at the very least, you'll get in danger. You can still get, beat up, but you're Wolverine. You're regenerating. That feels good. That feels like Barbarian. And it feels very much like a Beast Barbarian.
Yes.
At most tiers of play, that's like 2 hit points a turn. Past level 2, that doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It's pointless.
I think the concern there is like stacking up a lot of good attacks, but just like mathematically,
past level
when
5,
it comes to barbarians, you're either going to kill them with a series of nukes or you're not.
Basically, yeah. When it comes to barbarians, you're either going to eat them alive in 3 turns with your giant wizard, or they're going to live through the combat.
Yeah.
Let them feel good while they do it. Come
on. They reduce the damage die on the tail attack from a D12 to a D8, which D12 is high for any weapon, but now it provides a defensive parry option. Good way for barbarians to use their reactions. That's cool.
Yeah, barbarians have a little bit of a, unless they're multi-attacking, they do have a little bit of a reaction, action, like economy deficit to make up. That's good. And in contrast to the other thing, that's an absolutely fine nerf. D12 to D8, totally agreed.
Yeah.
That was too high. It's not that I want all dice damage to go up, just where they're too small. This, too big. Lowering it, fine.
Yeah, that makes sense. And it adds some like fun to it instead of just being, I get bigger damage,
Yeah.
Call the Hunt replaces the use of Reckless Attack for all of your allies and advantage on saves versus being frightened for an additional 1d6 damage on attacks for your friends.
That is an absolute complete buff.
Definitely.
That's way better. Nobody fucking uses Reckless Attack. Nobody.
Well, and like, okay, you use this when you're the barbarian in a party that consists of a bard, a rogue, and a wizard. They are not going to touch it. Your fighter friend might. Your paladin friend might.
Nobody
your
uses Reckless Attack. Not even barbarians use Reckless Attack. I am the only barbarian I've ever seen intentionally use Reckless Attack.
We've got the Wild Soul Barbarian, which is now the Wild Magic Barbarian, which is better.
Better name.
It trades on a concept that's been in Dungeons and Dragons for a long time. It evokes something specific. Soul sounds more like spiritual.
Yeah, it sounds... I would expect Wild Soul Barbarian to be like even cleric-y or zealot barbarian.
Or the Beast Barbarian, where their soul is wild.
Yeah. Wild magic, clean, clear, under control. Clear yourself.
Lingering Magic is now magic awareness and provides a unique ability to find magic items and spell use and determine the type of your proficiency times per long rest. Instead of casting Detect Magic, your con times per long rest.
This, great change.
Yeah, it's very unique. I like that. Just it lets him set it apart, and it doesn't feel like you're casting a spell as a barbarian.
No, it feels like you're utilizing your fucking... You can smell magic. That's way better.
That's really cool. Wild Surge effects are just vastly improved across the board. You have more control, and there are more reusable effects to improve the feeling of playing a Wild Magic Barbarian as your rage continues. So this is the effect that when you go into a rage, before a Wild Magic effect would happen, kind of like...
And then you're just a regular barbarian in a rage. Who cares?
But now it just kind of keeps going or reactivates, and
that feels cool. Yeah. That feels like a wild, untamed, magical force. Sorcerer.
Magic Reserves is now Bolstering Magic, removes the force damage cost and replaces it with a limiter of proficiency times per long rest.
A+.
Remove the die growth from D4 to D6 entirely, replacing it with a D3.
I hate that.
It's an awkward die. I would...
Just make it a D4.
I mean, yeah, there again.
Again, it's not worth it's not the awkward garbage. I have to roll a D6 and then divide it by 2, or 1 to 3 is blah 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 blah. I don't care. Just make it a D4. Give me an actual piece of plastic that I can toss and make the clicky clacky noise, and I read the number. That feels better, and it's not that much of a fucking difference. Non-standard dice when you already have 4, 6, 8, 10 percentile 12 and 20 in your pool, in your kit as a D&D designer is not necessary. It's not.
Any situation where you're making a big change over a theoretical +1.
Maybe just err on the side of the players.
Yeah, err on user friendliness. But anyway, they removed the ability to grant temporary HP to people if they have full spell slots. Instead, allowing the barbarian to choose between recovering a random spell level for the target or granting them again a D3 bonus to attack rolls and ability checks for 10 minutes. Now you roll the D3 once, and
Again,
it's flat,
yeah.
but like still D4. Come on.
D4. I like giving spell slots back. That's cool.
Yeah, giving spell slots back was always cool, and I like that it's instead of like, oh well, if they're high on spell slots, but like, what if your guy doesn't have a spell slot? What if you want to help out the fighter?
Then
what
he
if...
gets advantage on attack rolls.
Well,
Or a D3 bonus. Excuse me.
now they do. Before they just didn't.
That's lame.
Yeah, so
This is just a good change.
Arcane Rebuke is now Unstable Backlash, which removes the specific force damage effect and replaces it with more uses of your wild magic. Good call. I feel like one part of the power creep I don't agree with is that they just sort of tossed out, everybody does force damage. You do force damage. You do force damage.
It's really harmed the Warlock to a great extent.
Yeah.
Because the Warlock's clear, like almost exclusive unless you're burning a feat for it. Force damage cantrip, top tier, unstoppable force damage, best damage in the game, nothing resists it. It being so taken, like it being tossed out everywhere is meh. It makes the Warlock feel worse. And also, like, one of the parts of power creep is they just did fucking new stuff, new classes, new subclasses. They just have more shit they can do.
A lot of times they do add a lot of flexibility in different things. So
cleaning this up, making it more uses of the same new cool thing we already made for you, good.
Yeah. Overall, I like this rebalance. There's a couple of like big question mark moments, but ultimately they don't harm the class too much any more than anything else in 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons is hampered by stupid core design philosophy that is very silly. We are running a bit long, but for the sake of getting through at least a little more of what we're here to talk about, because we did talk about some other stuff, blanket thoughts and stuff, for a while at the beginning, let's go ahead and go through the Creation Bard, and then we'll call it a podcast.
Sounds good.
The Creation Bard has the one with the floating music note that I hate so very much, but it can now also be a star, flower, or any other symbol. I still think it's weird that the class describes it as being a visual thing. Like, it... And now, when you use it to add the bonus to an ability check, it emits particle effects. Described by the class, not as particle effects, but they're like, oh, little shiny sparks go off. And, like, I get that if you're designing a video game... But we're not. You're asking me to pretend something that either A, I was already going to pretend on my own, or B, doesn't really add much. How weird. Like, I mean, I'm not going to be shitty about it and be like, what DM would say, oh, cool, sparks go off. No, that's being descriptive. But, like, why do you need to tell me that's what happens? If I'm going to describe something as a DM, I either am or I am not.
I cannot explain to you why people like this. It is clear you will never get it. I'm going to be honest.
The other symbols I find interesting. The fact that it can be something different, that gives me a little more interesting flexibility, you know. But also, it's strange that they suggest a flower. I don't know, that's kind of weird. Bards and flowers? Maybe it's a specific reference I'm not getting.
I understand why people would find this a cool thing that they want to play. I can't explain it to you.
I get the class, and I feel like the whole thing here is just a huge buff. Quality of life, fantastic. This one thing makes me go, what? Why? And why are you describing it so specifically? I feel like there's a vision I'm not getting. Or as I said, a reference to something that I'm not, it just doesn't make sense to me. But anyway, Performance of Creation is now moved to a 3rd level feature from being the capstone.
Excellent change.
And it has in fact received a bunch of quality of life buffs and clearer explanation on what it can and can't do. And
Excellent change number 2.
I believe we talked about this literally in the podcast where we talked about the creation.
Did we mention, like, maybe make this a lower level feature
Yeah.
because it's the coolest part of the fucking class?
I believe so, yeah.
Yeah, in general, the coolest thing in your class probably shouldn't be your capstone.
Unless it's cool and OP.
Yeah, cool and OP is different. Most OP thing is probably supposed to be the capstone. The coolest thing should be lower, because that way the players get to use it.
Also, who loves those capstones that are like, all right, now you have +2 to something. You're welcome.
Yeah.
Anyway, animating performance now lets the item to continue to act if you're incapacitated. I might skip over this in future entries just because it's a holistic thing they've applied to everything. Most of your minions can do that now.
That's
Summoned or
just
otherwise.
nice.
Yeah.
That's just a version of the ranger buff. Yeah. If I spent power budget to animate a thing, I want it to be animated. I don't want it to use my resources to make it continue to go. Then it is not animate, it is telekinesis.
The new capstone creative crescendo allows you up to your charisma and items and removes the price limit, although only one item you're animating is full size. The rest have to be small or tiny. Which works if you were making a bunch of tiny items anyway, and is on top of a buffed performance of creation.
And so is good. This is not just a quality of life improvement, it is also a fairly big buff.
Not to mention, I believe you can sustain animate objects while doing that.
Yeah, so you can do full on the last fight in the Beauty and the Beast, as you so eloquently put it when we were talking about it when it first came out. I could have a chest of drawers, drop an elbow off the top rope on a motherfucker, and I'm going to do that someday.
Even in a less goofy sense, I mean, you can.
Well, that's the thing is, I think part of the reason, at least for me, this would be a character I'd want to play, is to be the over-the-top cartoon character bard. Like, that's why the floating music note with the particle effects.
I mean, like, that's an option. I like that you can do other things. And don't get me wrong, if I were to do this, unless I became really enamored with a concept, I'm sure I would do it the same way. I mean, you're playing a bard, first of all. But you can also take it very serious. You can be a bard armed with a bunch of swords or knives or something, and that's what you animate with this magic. And they just go whizzing around, stabbing the fuck out of your opponents. That is cool.
Yes, that is cool.
So, you know, I like that it feels like there's more options for what you do with this bard. They're not as focused around
Big
whimsy.
fancy music note. Yeah.
But that's going to do it for us in this podcast. This is definitely going to be multiple episodes.
Yeah, clearly.
So we'll be back to talk more about Tasha's in the future.
Until then, everything's better when nerds talk about it.
Fuck it.